Hey guys, Kim McGrath here, your sports nutrition coach. Wanted to address a question that I commonly get, which is when should I be eating? And before we talk about some key points around that, I wanted to emphasize that in terms of your performance, your goals, whether they be fat loss, strength increase, endurance increase, the number one factors that you want to look at are your overall calorie intake, your energy intake per day, your macronutrients, so the breakdown of protein, carbohydrates, and fats you have in your diet, as well as your food composition, meaning you're focused on eating wholesome and healthy foods and getting enough vegetables and getting the micronutrients you need. So that is the priority in terms of establishing a diet and a plan. Focus on that first, and then once you have that established, then you can start to play around and consider things with meal timing. One of the key points that I want to talk about with meal timing is that our bodies generally like consistency and like patterns. So whatever you decide to do, try to be consistent with it and not have irregular or odd eating frequency, meaning one day I'm going to eat a huge breakfast, not eat the rest of the day. Maybe another day I'm going to eat only a huge dinner. If you eat generally 3 times per day or up to 6 times per day, be consistent with that pattern, and yes, that includes the weekends. There's been a study that was recently published that folks who on the weekends consumed their food in a different eating pattern during the week had an increased risk of higher body mass index. There was a higher incidence of being more overweight with an irregular meal eating frequency. So try to stick to a pattern that is reasonable for you and easy to follow, and stick with it no matter what day of the week it is. That's number one. Secondly, protein. There is some indication that there is benefit related to our body composition if we distribute our protein intake evenly throughout the day. So if you can, try to distribute your protein throughout all of your meals evenly versus having one large protein meal per day. There may be some body composition and some benefits related to satiety that you feel once you've established that. So that's protein. You may have heard a little bit about intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding. As it relates to weight loss, if you have a diet that, let's say, in order to lose weight, you need to eat 1,800 calories per day. If you generally stay within 1,800 calories per day throughout all of your meals versus saying, okay, no, I'm going to restrict my eating to this certain number of hours per day, and then I eat those 1,800 calories within that window, the weight loss is going to be the same regardless of whether you distribute it evenly throughout the day or you restrict that time window because it's 1,800 calories. However, you may have heard people saying, I tried intermittent fasting, or I tried to time restrict my feeding and I had enormous benefits in terms of weight loss. That's because in their time feeding window, they were actually eating less calories per day. They also make mention of things, hey, I just feel more energetic. I enjoy only eating during this period of day. That's great. I encourage you to experiment with that and see if it can be of benefit to you. But understand that from a weight loss perspective, there is no magic to intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding related to your diet. Another thing you might have heard, and this is, once again, the media and the headlines wanting to catch your attention will say, eat a huge breakfast if you want to lose weight. Make sure you get all your calories in at breakfast. That's quite an exaggeration. There are some studies that indicate that if you consume, in general, more of your calories earlier in the day, that might have benefit over your overall resting metabolic rate and your overall energy consumption throughout the day when done consistently over time. So that's another thing to consider. Maybe you want to eat a little bit more earlier in the day, meaning get more of your calories before mid-afternoon versus late in the evenings. It's certainly worth a try to see if it benefits you from an overall satisfaction perspective and toward your goals. Another one that we hear is completely avoid eating before bed. This is bad for you. It really depends on the case. I would say it's number one, individual preference, but number two, if you're an athlete or if you're training very hard, if you're crushing your workouts in the gym and you train at night, it may be a benefit to have a meal later in the day. If your primary concern is retention of lean muscle mass or gain of muscle mass, I actually prefer to have a meal, a higher protein meal, quite late in the day, maybe even before bed. So that's something to consider to play around with. Once again, if you are within your overall caloric needs for the day, when you eat those is a secondary factor. So if you really enjoy having a big meal at the end of the day and you're still within your calorie range, go ahead and do that. Don't be afraid to do that if that's what makes the most sense for you to be, once again, consistent throughout time. Last point I'll make is, it's easy to generate a plan on paper and say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then reality sets in, right? What's going on in your life day to day? You may have set yourself up to have a meal at a certain time per day, but then you realize, oh, I'm always in a meeting that time of day, or I'm always busy doing something else. So you're setting yourself up not to be able to adhere to the plan. So whatever you do, definitely factor in your everyday lifestyle when you're training, and that's really key and important feature. As it relates to training itself, try to get in a meal with protein and carbohydrate about 2 hours before you get a workout in. That will benefit you in terms of your performance and your energy level during your workouts, most likely. If you're an early morning trainer, you may not be able to have time 2 hours before you work out to fully digest a meal before you go into the gym, but having a light carbohydrate protein snack before you go work out could certainly help. After training, something that you certainly want to consider is getting in a good protein, carbohydrate-based meal. Unlike some of the, once again, the catchy headlines that you see out there, there is no magic to immediately consuming a large protein shake directly after you work out. The anabolic window for muscle growth, the window of time in which our muscles can replenish themselves with glycogen, the storage form of glucose in our muscles, and the fuel that we need to recover our muscles, that can be done literally within hours after a workout. It does not need to occur immediately. So my general advice is, as long as you can get a good solid dose of protein and carbohydrate within the first 2-3 hours after your workout, you're probably on the safe side. If you can have a post-workout snack and get something in right away, even better. But it's certainly not going to have any significant impact on your progress if you wait a period of time. So those are just some factors to consider as you look at your meal timing. If you have any questions related to what you should be eating as well as when you should be eating, feel free to reach out to me anytime. My email is kim@modus-energy.com, and look forward to speaking with you in person